Hi everyone, it's Neve here and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at making an apron out of upcycled jeans. So these are an old pair of jeans that have been sitting around for a while that I was supposed to be repairing, but I'm not a sewer and I decided I needed another apron. Now I've made aprons like this before in the past, but this is the first time I've actually decided to really sort of get in and decorate it, make it look pretty. So just trimming around the jeans with a pair of scissors, so from the zip cutting to the side seams and then cutting down far enough that you can cut across the back of the jeans and get a square piece of material. You can see they're very well worn jeans and probably fixing them was never going to happen, especially seeing I'm not the sewer in the family. So just using a ruler to try and draw a straightish line and using again fabric scissors to cut the denim. So the reason why I really like making aprons using an old pair of jeans is the fact that the belt around what's going to belt around you fits because it's your pair of jeans. So whatever size you are, obviously your jeans should be the same size as you and it should fit nice and snug around you. It's not going to move on you. I always find, particularly because I'm short as well, that on bought aprons the straps are way too long on me, so they're either dragging on the floor or they come undone really easily. So it just sits nicely. So what I'm starting out doing is with some white acrylic paint, painting onto the pockets. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I want to have really bright colour on the pockets, and because of the colour of the denim, it's quite a dark denim. If I didn't put the white down, I would get quite a dulled down colour, and you'll see the comparison between putting the white underneath and having just the straight colour onto the denim later on. So just layering up the colour using a cheap makeup sponge that I got from my local $2 shop to blend the colours together. So I'm using the Dina Wakley heavy bodied acrylic paints. I was lemon, tangerine and magenta on one pocket and lime, I think it was ocean and lapis on the other. Then I'm going around the edges of the pocket with the gilt, which is the metallic gold paint. I was finding when I was doing this that using the makeup sponges was the easiest way to apply paint. Obviously putting in the detail in with the paintbrush, but I was finding that just because I was using a lot of stenciling and so on this project, that the makeup sponges were just the easiest way to do it. The good thing was with a wet wipe, you can see I went over the edge there and I was able to sort of wipe it up. I'm not too concerned about the paint at the top of the pockets. I was going to go back in and put a design coming out from the pockets, but I decided not to in the end. But usually the pockets will actually have something in it, so you're not going to see any excess paint there. So I'm using, these are Donna Downey stencils, which are an 8x8 stencil. They're really great quality, and the reason I really like them is they're all to do with art. A lot of most of the stencils in my craft kits are all patterns and textures. I don't have anything that really represents what we do, so I quite liked a lot of her stencils have that art theme, whether the paintbrushes are talking about being an art, talking about art or being an artist, and it worked really well with this project. So just again going over with the white paint and then going back in and using some of her words. Now I noticed I used some washi tape just to mask off the bottom of the word. One, because I'm not very good when I stencil and I tend to go further than I should, and this just protects and just masks off that word in particular. Now what I was trying to achieve by putting those three paints down was like an ombre effect. It didn't quite work the way I wanted to, which is why I went back in with just some plain paint. But I quite like the sort of mixed colour there. So I did that again, I didn't use a new sponge for it, so I didn't mind that there was some of the other colour on the sponge to begin with. So you can see me masking off the word again, and then I'll go back in with some lemon paint just to pick that up again. Now if I wanted those words to stick out more so than they are at the moment. I probably should have stenciled the words in white first and then gone over with the colour, and that would have really made them pop from the background. I wasn't too concerned because I quite liked the fact that you could see the paintbrushes coming through the background, and I thought that at some stage I might outline them. So that was my thought process at this stage. Going back in again, washi is just so useful for just doing those really simple masking off areas, and this is one of my favourite stencils at the moment, just that simple flower. This is a Flutterby Design, which is an Australian company who do some great stencils. Please excuse the swearing on the stencil, but it very much appeals to me. So again, using that trick with the washi tape just to mask off the words that I actually wanted to use. Because the words in this are so close together, if I didn't do that, I would be likely to get some of the other words stenciled onto my project as well. So just leaving the paint to dry a little bit. The good thing about working on fabric is the fact that it will, paint by its nature will actually soak into the fabric really quickly. So while it feels damp under your arm, it's not going to move anywhere, which is why I was able to sort of stencil over things fairly quickly. I didn't have to wait too much to dry. I didn't need to get my heat gun out. So now all I'm doing is, putting a bit of extra detail into the stencil, just using a white Sharpie pen. And because my pen, I probably should have left this to dry a little bit longer, was blocking up slightly and the tips got a little bit scratchy. It was sort of catching on things. I had the piece of paper there that I was able to test the pen out, and you know, if it flooded, it flooded. Here I'm just getting my journal out and using up all the excess paint that I had on my sponges. I'm sure I'll be able to do something with that afterwards. So now I'm going back in with Posca paint pens to outline the edges, just to give a bit more colour and definition, try and make them sort of 3D-ish. So using the blue, the pink and the yellow pen. I'm trying to remember which side I was doing that on. Going over again because it was slightly translucent, just to make sure it sort of stood out. And then going around with a black marker. This is actually a fabric marker. I got it to label my daughter's clothes. So just to again help those words pop out just a little bit from the background. I would have tried to use a paint pen, but I've only got a broad tipped black pen and I didn't think that would work particularly well with the fine lines that I had in this stencil. So that's why I chose to use the fabric marker instead. Not that I'm ever expecting this to be washed, but you can actually use a hot iron over the top of the acrylic paint. Obviously put some greaseproof paper or some sort of protection in between that and your iron, and it will sort of heat set the acrylic paint somewhat, that you can, if you did need to wash it. You may find some paint coming off, but in my experience it has worked. And when I've tried to wash acrylic paint out of clothing that I've had, it's fairly permanent once it's dry. Don't know if anyone else has got that experience. So just going in with the Jane Davenport pens to outline the words, just to make them stick out, and then going over with the Posca black pen to do some running stitch around the side of the pockets. Kind of ironic, but that's pretty much the only sewing that I could possibly do, is actually drawing it on. So as I was looking at this, I thought I really liked it sort of the way it was, but I did think, oh, it's looking a little bit plain. So I got my favourite stencil out, which is this dot stencil. I have no idea why I really like this stencil, because it's such a plain stencil, but it's been popping up in my work a lot recently. And this is where you can see the difference between putting the white paint underneath and just stenciling straight onto the denim. A lot of the colours, particularly the lighter colours, are sort of seeping into the background and sort of really dull down. But because I want the pockets to be the focus, I'm not too concerned about that. If you really wanted the colours to pop, I would put some white paint underneath and then re-stencil over the top again. So I'm actually being quite good for a change and actually using a separate sponge for each colour, which is something I never do. But because I wanted the colours to stay as pure as possible, I actually got into my kit and got 7 sponges out to do this. So they won't stay, those single colours, for very long. I'm sure in the next project I'll probably mix them up. In fact, I think I already have. But for this project it worked out the way I wanted it to. So just putting those dots in the background just gives a little bit of extra interest to the apron itself. At this stage, while I was doing this, I was kind of considering, am I going to do anything to paintbrushes? Am I going to put any more colour onto those? And I decided not to. So instead I decided to use the excess paint on the top band, just to put a band of colour across it. And this is one area I wish I'd painted it white first and then put the colour down, because I would have really liked to have a really strong rainbow stripe across the top. And you can see me applying the paint, using up the paint on my palette, but applying the paint directly to the denim because I wanted it slightly thicker, so it was a darker colour rather than that just the soft colour from the makeup sponges. So when I'd done this, I decided while I was leaving it to dry that I wanted to put some stamping on it. So I'm going through my stamps at the moment, trying to get out what I want. And I pulled out the Dina Wakley word stamps from the, I think it's called the Scribble Girl set, which says stop thinking, just create, art is life. And I thought that worked really well with the sentiments of the apron itself. Again, I had the sponges out. I don't know what I was thinking. It would be much more sensible, and I actually do this later on, just to sponge the paint on instead of trying to use a palette knife. But, you know, at 10:30 at night when you're in the mood, you just don't actually think about these things. So you can see here I've actually switched over to using a sponge to sponge the paint onto the surface of the stamp and then stamp it out. I'm really glad I put the white stamping onto the surface. It just added some extra interest into that background. And while it's quite as soft, it's not quite as strong as the white down the bottom. It sort of ties it all together. You've got those 3 points of white on the page, so the top with the words, the middle with the stamping, and then the bottom with the stenciling. So these stamps are just geometric stamps from Carabelle Studio, I think. So this is a finished apron, and I added some Prima flowers that I had in my stash. They've been in my stash for ages and it just needed it. So I did glue them on. I probably should actually sew them on just to make sure they're extra secure, but so be it. I hope you enjoyed this and it inspired you to make your own aprons. Thanks for watching.